All right, this is Honors Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus. We're doing 5.5 in Algebra 2, which is the quadratic formula, but here in this second video, we'll discuss the axis of symmetry. So remember from 5.1 that the axis of symmetry is this line, sorry, we're beach balling, is this line that cuts a parabola down the middle, right? And if the parabola is a frown, if it looks like this, there's an axis of symmetry right here, right? And ignore my inability to draw symmetric things. Okay, so we can find the equation of this axis of symmetry in a couple different ways. So remember, it is the x-coordinate of the vertex, right? So the vertex is, usually we write it as h comma k, right? Well, we've seen that the axis of symmetry is x equals h, the x-coordinate of the vertex. But we can use our knowledge of the quadratic formula to find that x-coordinate using just the standard form of the quadratic equation that we have, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So using that, we'll be able to find that the equation for the axis of symmetry can be x equals negative b over 2a, but let me show you why. And it's listed here, but let me show you the logic of it. So if we think about the quadratic formula, right, the quadratic formula is able to give you the two roots of a quadratic equation, right? So the two x-intercepts are roots. Let's call that one x1, let's call this one x2, right? Those are the two roots. So we know that x1, or I guess I reversed them, doesn't matter, we'll call this one x1 and x2, my bad. Okay, so x1 is negative b plus the square root of the quantity b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and the other x, the other root, is negative b minus that same square root all over 2a. So let's look at what happens if I write those out. So if we take negative b plus or minus, and then if we split this into two fractions, so the negative b is over 2a, right? And then we'll say, sorry, ignore the plus or minus, I meant plus, right? So if we take this plus this ugly square root, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a, right? And add that to this negative b over 2a minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. What you'll notice, and then since we're averaging those, we're averaging them to find the midpoint of those two values, right? Because that would be the middle of these two values. What you'll notice is that this thing and this thing conveniently sum to 0. So you're going to get a negative 2b over 2a all over 2, right? Well, that's a negative b over a all over 2, which is the same as a negative b over 2a. So again, what you're doing is averaging those 2 points and finding the middle. Now, it does hinge on the fact that a is not 0, but it wouldn't be quadratic if a were 0. So what that means for the record is that you can find the coordinates of a vertex just with the quadratic equation in standard form, because you're going to get negative b over 2a, and then whatever happens when you plug negative b over 2a in for your y value. So you can find h and k, the vertex of a parabola, using negative b over 2a for the x-coordinate, and then the y value evaluated at negative b over 2a for the y-coordinate. This is super useful in word problems, especially when we talk about projectile motion, right? Because if you launch something in the air and you're asked to find how high it goes, right? This spot right here is when x is negative b, over 2a, and the y value is whatever would happen if you plug in that negative b over 2a into the equation that you're given, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and walk through two examples, or an example in a practice problem. So let f equal 19 plus 8x plus 2x squared. Write the equation of the axis of symmetry and find the coordinates of the vertex. So I'm going to rewrite this in my standard form, which means the x degrees are descending, right? So my a is 2, my b is 8, and my c is 19. That means that the x-coordinate, right, so the axis of symmetry, which is the x-coordinate of the vertex, would be negative b over 2a, so negative 8 over 4, which is negative 2, right? Once I know that the vertex is negative 2 comma blank. The way I find this blank is by finding f of negative 2, which would be a 2 times a 4 plus an 8 times a negative 2 plus a 19. Right, and that's 8 minus 16 plus 19, right, which should be an 11, right? You can either do the 8 minus 16, which gives you a negative 8 plus 19 is 11, or you could recognize that the negative 16 and the 19 nets a positive 3. Either way, you get 11, so that's my vertex. All right, let's go ahead and do P4. You can try it without me if you'd like. So this is already written in standard form. right? My A is the 1, my B is a -4, my C is a +1. So my axis of symmetry is going to be x equals -b, which will be a negative of -4, over 2a. So it's going to be 4 over 2, or 2. That means that my vertex is at 2 comma blank. The way I find that blank is by plugging in g of 2, right? So that's going to be a 4 minus a 4 times 2 plus a 1. 4 minus 8 plus 1 is -4 plus 1, or -3. All right, and that's it. So that's it for this video on axis of symmetry.